Hello and welcome to the 10th edition of Confront. A few weeks ago, the Supreme Court opened Sabarimala's doors to women, but patriarchy and prejudice, it turns out, has ensured that they remained shut. In fact, two women barely 500 meters from Sabarimala's doors were forced to return after the priest threatened to shut the shrine. Whole legions of conservatives have descended on the shrine, claiming that the Supreme Court has violated their faith by encouraging what they call as feminist overreach. In fact, the left state government that was initially in support of the Supreme Court verdict has backed down, claiming it will leave the end decision to the Shrine Board that is preparing now to appeal the verdict. But do patriarchs, traditionalists, conservatives actually have a case? Remember, it's already been decided. 4-1 against them. To confront this and inevitably each other, we have with us Padma Pillai, spokesperson of the Ready to Wait movement, and Anand Ranganathan, author and scientist, a contributor also to Swarajya magazine. And I want to begin with you first, Ms. Pillai. Are conservatives bullying the law?
Bullying the law?
Yes.
Actually, we feel bullied now, especially about the Sabarimala case, because the judgment clearly states that we are not a religious denomination, and we have not been told why. You know, the benefits of being a religious denomination is what we have enjoyed all these years when we were able to autonomously manage our affairs, which does not affect anybody's social, personal, financial life. Not being able to go to Sabarimala did not adversely impact a woman's life. So this was the premise, that we have different paths to seek the same goal, and each of us pick different paths, and every path need not be all inclusive. That is the basic premise of the kind of faith and culture that we follow. And suddenly to be told that everything has to conform to this same set of rules and you don't have diversity in your journey, we feel bullied. So it's an outpouring of angst actually. If you see the visuals that people are marching even in Sabarimala, where people are supposedly stopping women, they are crying and falling at their feet. It's not somebody, there have been political and agent provocateurs and people who have, come in and created certain issues, but largely if you see the majority of people are praying, crying and falling at the people's feet. And how do you call that bullying? It's an outpouring of angst. And it's never happened in Kerala before. We are supposed to be a stoic, stiff upper lip kind of bunch of people. But it's happened because this strikes at the core of our this is like you're taking away our crutch. Our temples are our crutch. And we feel that we are not able to walk.
So this is an assault on a continuous tradition that dates back ages, and it has been observed.
It's not just about dating back. It's about the impact that this tradition has had on our life. And it's suddenly feeling bereft. We've removed the glasses.
What would
we
you
can't
then
see
say
clearly
to
now.
the Kerala High Court in Mahindran?
Yes.
The High Court noted that even when old customs prevailed, women were allowed to visit the temple.
They were not allowed. They did visit the temple. That is the difference. That there were. I don't know whether it's politically correct to say that, but the bane of Kerala, I find, is the creeping ideological Marxism that gets into everybody. And after EMS Namboodiripad, a lot of those priestly class also
But today
followed.
you won't have a complaint on that score. The left seems to have done a right turn.
Not really. I wouldn't say I trust them.
Left it you don't trust them. But okay, that's a separate issue, and I don't want to
No,
get
but
down to
the temple itself were at certain times populated by people. The temple management itself were populated by people who did not believe in the temple itself,
So
and they found it to be some kind of a tourist
instances
place.
that the High Court pointed out. Now, you need to explain this. It noted an incident where Maharaja of Travancore, accompanied by the Maharani and the Diwan, had visited the temple in 1115.
Yes.
The High Court noted that the temple
1115 Malayalam.
Era. That's right. The High Court noted that the temple has seen the presence of women worshippers between the ages of 10 and 50 for the first rice feeding ceremony of their children. And there are several other examples that have been quoted. So how is this suddenly?
See, with the Maharani's issue, the palace itself has clarified that she had gotten her uterus removed at a very young age. And in the previous generation of ours, before the High Court verdict came, there was not an age restriction. It was about women of a certain, age group who are older than Ayyappan's mother. That was the concept. So they considered that 45 years of age and she could strictly follow the 41-day vratam, and that is the reason why she went. But the other things that happened, the rice feeding ceremonies, rice feeding, a marriage or such functions are actually not allowed in an ascetics temple.
Okay.
So that itself is a violation of the core concept of the temple, and such things happened.
Well, talk about violations. Justice Chandrachud.
Yes.
This is what he said. He says, its effect is to impose the burden of a man's celibacy on a woman and construct her as a cause for deviation from celibacy. Surely, this principle needs to be upheld.
See, when you say celibacy, that is a very rough and rude translation of the word brahmacharya. From Sanskrit, when you translate it into English, it loses a lot of its frills and color, and this becomes about celibacy. It's not about celibacy. It's about Ayyappan, who has taken this brahmacharya, that is a charya which he has to follow every single day of his life till the end of life, and in which he has vowed to avoid 8 of those contacts with the opposite sex. Now, if it were a brahmacharini, she would have avoided her opposite sex, right? So, if it were Ayyappan's temple was a brahmacharini's temple, the men would not be allowed. So, it's not about celibacy or Ayyappan losing control of himself or something like that. It's about his vow and whether it should be allowed to be broken. He cannot see a woman, he cannot think of a woman, he cannot touch a woman, smaranam keli and all that. There is a sloka for defining Naishtika Brahmacharya, and he has decided to adopt it. And then the tenet in the Shastra itself says that it is broken the moment you see a woman. It's not about whether Ayyappan gets excited or not.
Okay.
It's his vow is broken. Whether he gets excited or not, the sight of a woman breaks it.
We'll come to the legal consequences
and also about the burden
that arise,
part,
the right
about
to
the burden
equality.
part.
I'll come to that.
Yeah.
We'll break it down. Let me bring in Anand Ranganathan. Anand Ranganathan, why have you become part of the bullying brigade? You're bullying a faith, a tradition, adherence to that faith and tradition. No, jokes aside, why?
Yeah.
That's the charge.
Yeah.
You're bullying.
Right.
It's not they who are bullying, the law of the land. You're bullying. Why?
Now, I think that's wrong, and I think even Padma, we've had a wonderful discussion before we came onto this program.
That's half the problem.
Yes. No, but essentially, first of all, thank you for having me, Rahul. Let me qualify myself. I'm an atheist, not the fake communist atheist, but Darwinian atheist. So, I don't have essentially a skin in the game because I'm not religious, but I believe that, because of my views that are not religious in nature, I suppose my detachment will bring some amount of objectivism in how I view this thing.
Okay.
Essentially, how I view this whole issue is actually can be divided into a nice flow chart into 2 things. One is the judgment, and the other is the protest. That is the aftermath of judgment. So maybe let me take the aftermath first, because that was the question that you asked. Now, you see, I firmly believe that this land can only run on the law of the land. So there are only 2 kinds of people in a democracy. One who are judiciary, and the other who think they are judiciary. And I don't want people to think that they are judiciary, because we already have judiciary. Now, you see, your right to protest does not translate into right to prevent. And that's as simple as that. Now, let me give you a couple of examples. I can very well understand the Hindu grouse, because there have been a lot of appeasement, there have been judgments that haven't been taken care of, that haven't been implemented. But the basic point is that, unequal application of law or of a court order is not an excuse for violating a law or a court order. So there are people who are quite rightly saying that there have been Supreme Court judgments, for example, on the Shia Sunni case of this thing, and they haven't been implemented. But 2 wrongs in this case don't make a right. That's as simple as that. And finally, at least on this aspect of it, the other point is you have a Supreme Court judgment. You can defy a ban. How do you defy an unban, which is what in this case is, without infringing on the rights of others?
True.
So I can violate a law, but I must not violate a law if I must not violate the right of another person to follow that law. Now, that's all I said. If that constitutes as bullying, and I don't think Ms. Pillai considers that as bullying.
No, I don't.
But there is an interesting point she made.
Yes.
She says that feminists cannot speak for all women.
Yes.
There are a number of women who are actually crying because they are seeing a custom of theirs perhaps being violated. Now, the law has stepped in, and we'll come to that point, because I think you made a very important distinction. There's sentiment, and there is obviously the application of the law, which is where the problem is. So first you respond to this. Can feminists speak for all women and say this is the way it should be?
Well, it depends what kind of feminist you think of. I mean, I believe I'm a feminist. So obviously there are feminists, there are fake feminists, there are opportunists of, and everything. And I think I have been very illuminated by my talk with Ms. Pillai. Hinduism as a religion is very open. Some aspects of it are very open. Some aspects, of course, like all religions, are not open at all. And that, at least in the case of Hinduism, they are not immune to change. If we talk of other religions, they are absolutely
Hinduism is not shackled by entrenched patriarchy, at least in this context.
At least
so therefore, it's a bit of a surprise that there has been this backlash, and now we are trying to understand where this is coming from. Is it coming from a insecurity on part of the community which feels that its rights are being trampled, or is it actually a reaction to feminism? That's what I'm asking you.
Right.
Can feminists speak for everyone?
Yeah, so can I take a couple of minutes, because I think this gels nicely into the second piece, which was the judgment itself.
Yes.
And I think that is what is the real grouse has been brought about. That I firmly believe that the dissenting judge, Justice Indu Malhotra, said something really iconic and people missed it, which is, you cannot bring logic and rationale to religion. Now that is simple sentence, but it is absolutely true. I firmly believe that in giving this judgment, the Supreme Court has actually sided with, you can say, Article 21, which is right to liberty, right to dignity, right to whatever you may say it. There is a fundamental contradiction between Article 21 and Article 25. If you were to follow Article 21, Article 25 should not exist, because there are thousands of diktats in all religions that actually completely defy Article 21. I don't have to actually go and, it's just common sense, they completely defy it. Now let me come to 3 or 4.
But the courts drew a distinction between constitutional morality and public morality, and let me address this. Since he's brought us to that point. Justice Mishra and Justice Khanvilkar, let me just read out a bit of a excerpt. The exclusionary practice being followed at Sabarimala temple by virtue of Rule 3B of the 65 rules violates the right of Hindu women to freely practice their religion and exhibit their devotion towards Lord Ayappa. This denial denudes them of their right to worship. The right to practice religion under Article 25(1) is equally available to both men and women of all age groups professing the same religion. The impugned Rule 3B of the 65 rules framed under 65 Act that stipulates exclusion of entity of women of the age group 10 to 50 years is a clear violation of the right of Hindu women to practice their religious beliefs, which in consequence makes their fundamental right of religion under Article 25(1) a dead letter. Now, there are also women who want to enter the shrine.
I understand. In that sentence that you read out, the part about the ability to practice their religion, equal ability to practice their religion, and that is where I get stuck. Which religion? Which religion are the judges talking about? So when you come to a temple, either you believe in the temple as a tool for your sadhana. So when you take the temple, you cannot choose which rules you pick. You then pick the whole temple itself. So when a man or a woman in Kerala picks the temple as her mode of sadhana, as her mode of reaching Ayyappan, then she also picks the rules associated with that temple. Otherwise, the temple is ineffective. It's like you get into a car and say that I want to drive it like I would do a cycle.
They go into this aspect, in fact. They say that in no scenario can it be said that the exclusion of women of any age group can be regarded as an essential practice of Hindu religion.
I'm really sorry to say I should not, I don't know whether, it's okay to.
You can disagree.
I disagree, because how does somebody say that it's not an essential concept of Hindu religion? Where is the reference for that? For that statement that it is not an essential concept of this. The 5 ashauchas that have to be practiced in a temple are supposed to be the core tenet of that temple itself. It is mentioned in all the shastras. So where is the reference for that statement? that it is not essential for the nature of that temple. It's
Mr.
not
Ranganathan,
essential for
yeah.
moksha. It's not essential for moksha. If every Hindu's goal in life is to attain moksha, but he's been given an umpteen number of methods.
Well,
but if you pick this
they
method,
may not have cited a particular
but they should.
example, but they are generally speaking and saying by allowing women to enter into Sabarimala temple for offering prayers, it cannot be imagined that the nature of Hindu religion would be fundamentally altered or changed in any manner.
It does, because then you say that the whole the concept of a Hindu temple where a tantri brings in through the mantra and his the power that he has acquired over years of practice, he brings in a deity, he brings in a form of the Parabrahma into Panchabhuta form. That's a stone till it is brought to life by the tantri, and that is where the concept starts, that the tantri then is given the message in his mind that this is what I want by the god, and then he creates the mantras for the dhyana of that temple and does the process, and we all as the Deshavasis of that temple, if it's for a village, we take a vow in front of that deity that we will uphold this, and that is why he agrees to sit there and give darshan. So we are breaking an essential contract that is forming with the deity when we do all this. And then another essential part of not
but
just
the
Hindu
feelings
religion,
of the deity are being interpreted.
obviously,
They are being interpreted
Yes.
by a medium.
yes,
In this case, the tantri.
yes.
Now, how do we not know? And this is exactly where the problem begins.
Yes.
Because there are, of course, other faiths who will say, and let's even look at the example of triple talaq in that context. Now, I'm sure you support the action against instantaneous triple talaq, do you?
I am not sure.
See, there you
Because-
go.
Yeah.
Now, this is where the problem is,
the
because
more-
there are many people who will.
Because the problem is, I am not
If
well
you
studied
do,
on that.
if you do, you can't argue your own case.
No, not
That's
because
why
of that.
there
I
is
am not
this.
well studied on whether triple talaq is an action, because I was on a debate earlier with.
Well, let's just say
so
that
she
some
said that it's
adherents
not
of the
part
Muslim
Quran.
faith believe that it is part and parcel
Yeah.
of the
Then,
received
in my
wisdom.
opinion, a Muslim woman who does not want to be subject to triple talaq in her life should opt for Special Marriages Act.
Okay.
Okay, so I disagree a little bit with Ms. Pillai, but let me come down to the crux
You can
of it.
substantially disagree. This is not a court, and you're not in contempt.
Okay, but
Yeah.
you raised a very important point, and this is what I've been saying. You see, when say God speaks to us,
Yes.
how does God speak to us? This is why logic and rationale, as I come back again and again to Justice Malhotra, you cannot bring it to religion.
Yes.
Now, is there lightning in thunder? Is there some divine intervention through which? Or as Rahul, you put it, the Lord, the God, speaks to us through a medium.
Yes.
Yes.
Now, that medium has said that the deity doesn't want menstruating women,
Yeah.
fertile women, from
Ma-
10 to 50, between that, did not say menstruating,
No.
but 10 to 50, because he has taken a vow of, you can say celibacy, quote unquote celibacy, but brahmacharya, right? The judges have actually done the same thing here. The court that you quoted, or the Supreme Court judges, I contend they are trying to be the medium, saying that, the God has said this and not that. If you look at, the quote that you just quoted. So, ironically, the Supreme Court judges have donned the mantle of priests themselves. Now, see, the couple of things that are very important. Cultural aspect, where I would disagree with, I would bring my, disposition there, and the legal aspect. Legally, I believe that Ms. Pillai's case and Sai, who fought against the lifting of the ban, was actually very sound. A, for 4 reasons, very briefly. The deity has constitutional rights. B, the deity said that, look, I am in brahmacharya thing. I don't want women between 10 to 50 to come here.
Yes.
Okay. C, there are temples, half a dozen temples where men are not allowed. Okay. And it was not a question of impurity. That impurity, menstruation, I don't know how that got into it. That was not brought as a legal argument at all by the people who were against the lifting of the ban. And finally, you see, the thing is, if you look at now, a couple of days ago, just 30 seconds I would say.
No, please.
One Miss Nidhi Bahuguna, her tweet went viral. She was not allowed, she was disbarred from entering a church because she was wearing a sleeveless dress, which millions of women wear. And she said, is this not violating of my right to pray? Absolutely it is, and this is where I'm saying that there is fundamental contradiction between Article 25 and Article 21. Where do you stop? If you stop listening to the, you can say, the order of the deity, and you are listening to the order of the God, that the God doesn't want, God want decently dressed women to go into the church. I would say, so this is not a gender issue, this is a discrimination, perceived discrimination within a particular gender, which is women. So Sabarimala people are saying it's a gender issue, male. No, it's not. It is a discrimination that is, some women believe that they are being discriminated against. Now, this discrimination happens in all religions. Are you going to say that no, the dress code cannot override Article 20?
It depends on how intrinsic it is to the practice of that particular faith. And in this particular case,
well, we've seen lakhs of women have come on to this. They're silently protesting. There's a lot of poignancy about it.
Look,
so they
there are
believe
two
that.
sides.
There
are many women.
Question
there were 3 women who tried to
enter.
get to the gates. And it was quite tragic to see them being beaten back. Now,
Beaten back?
Pushed back. I'm not saying beaten as in the literal sense of the term, but
I think it was psychological.
yeah, well, psychologically beaten back.
Yeah.
But there were cases where journalists were prevented from.
There were. There were some
that
cars were
was
rounded
very
up.
bad. That was very bad.
In fact, some of my colleagues were attacked.
Very bad.
So I'm asking you, can we hold the law hostage in this particular manner? I'm sure.
To that, the answer for me is that I am not for violent protests, or I am not. We have always said ready to wait, not ready to stop. The first thing is be very clear. We are not willing to go and physically stop anybody. We'll keep appealing with our words to people to understand and probably see our point of view and then decide not to go. We would be very pained if it happens. But the fact is that the Tantri of the temple and the Karyakartas of the temple have to stop them. Because that, then, they are no longer relevant. The Tantri should just get out, because if his word is not valid. What he said yesterday.
Tantri's word needs to be reinforced. The Supreme Court that sets the law of the land.
The problem is where what happens is, when you talk about religion,
not valid.
When you talk about religion, it's not about rational, it's about experience. So when the Pratishtha happens and the Tantri says, this here is Lord Ayyappa, right? We trust him.
But
so where does the trust end?
Well,
when he says Naistika Brahmacharya?
That's where motivations can enter the picture.
But that's exactly what I'm again trying to complete, is that going to Sabarimala temple.
Well, that's been resolved now. That's been resolved.
Going to Sabarimala temple, unlike going to a church for a Christian, he has to fulfill a certain obligation, which he has taken as a covenant from Christ.
Look, if you continue down this argument, there is no room for reform or perceived reform.
No, but again,
then we become
when you come to reform,
constantly go back to fundamentals.
You will have to tell us what is the benefit of reform.
No, but the benefit is
let me put it this succinctly.
A substantial number of women will be able to exercise their right to pray.
At the cost of what?
Well, that is a cost that, as I'm trying to suggest,
And when I'm paying that cost as a devotee of Ayyappa, because I'm going to pay the cost, is it finally going to be reflected in society and worth my sacrifice?
First of all, on this point, you see, the women who now want to go between the ages of 10 and 50, ironically, they are believers in Ayyappan, and they are defying his wish. Basically, that's what they're doing, right? If they are happy with that, that's great. But I would say again, it's futile bringing logic and rationale into what kind of a believer are you if you disbelieve the wish of your God and have your way.
No, but I would still have accepted it had it not had a transformatory nature for the deity and the temple itself.
Right.
Now
I wanted to make one very small argument. You see, this is where I said I am legally with this whole case, but culturally, and this is where I come back to the important point that Rahul made. You see, it's all very well to say that God has ordained this.
Yes.
Now, supposing tomorrow the deity, or earlier, in fact, this was the case, deity said that Dalits should not be allowed in the temple. Would you say, yes, let's stick with that? You can't, right? Would you? First of all, would you? You would say Dalits should not be allowed
if the deity has said it.
Okay. Now, that fundamentally violates,
if the deity has said it.
Dalits are also Hindus, right?
Yeah, but the deity would then have the deity and the tantri, when he is producing that judgment, is not producing it out to the world. There are a bunch of acharyas sitting there ready to debate him and to request that the nature of the deity be changed.
This is where the problem comes.
And that is what happened.
So
when
you
the
don't believe
temple
that
entry,
is discrimination?
There were certain cases in Kerala. No, there were certain cases in Kerala till the 1930 temple entry proclamation, where the people claimed that it was the deity who said that this rule should exist. And it was defeated by the acharyas themselves, who then sat and had a debate with the tantri and everybody concerned, and wormed out the nuances of everything in presence of the then ruler of the temple, the Raja of that place, and the Raja was convinced that yes, these are the arguments which are right. And the tantri also made adjustments.
Well, again, we're in contravention
this is exactly
of constitutional morality versus societal morality.
That's what I'm saying.
And this is where the problem is, and something has to give. And in this particular case, constitutional morality, for the following reasons, has been upheld. Let me just explore this judgment a little deeper. Justice Nariman, he says, and this is interesting, he says the argument that all women are not prohibited from entering the temple can be of no avail, as women between age groups of 10 and 50 are excluded completely. Also, and this is very critical, the argument that such women can worship at the other Ayyappa temples is no answer to the denial of their fundamental right to practice religion as they see it, which includes their right to worship at any temple of their choice. On this ground also, the right to practice religion as claimed by the tantris and the worshippers must be balanced with and must yield to the fundamental right of women between the ages of 10 and 50, who are completely barred from entering the temple of Sabarimala.
No, then again, I come back to the question again and say, which religion?
Well, yeah, but Ms. Pillai, don't you understand?
Even in this particular case,
see, like I said, I don't like if somebody says that Dalits should not enter.
No, but
I don't like it.
It's not an essential
I have the option of, then saying that I will never cooperate with that temple again. But I do not have the right to forcibly then enter Dalits into the temple. That's all I'm saying. Let's all step back and say Sabarimala is not going to be our temple anymore.
If you go by societal norms tomorrow, a group of people who might be between the age of 40 and 50 might be in a position to seize power, for instance, and say that anyone above the age of 60 should be exterminated because they are actually a huge burden on our economy.
Actually, the impact on a person's life. Right?
That's
the problem I'll compare it with Sati also.
You see Article 21. And if
see,
you look
the
at
problem is, if you use rationale and constitution to speak to people who are basing their entire arguments on sentiment, it doesn't work.
See, I was not on the same platform. Till such time when you say that under no circumstances can Article 21 override Article 25. That is where I also said legally I am with you on this case, but culturally I cannot agree. For example, you took the example of Dalits. Okay, now untouchable, that is in our constitution. Untouchability is outlawed.
Correct.
And in fact, there were so many movements.
In society, right?
There were so many movements. Mahatma Gandhi, entry of Dalits into temples.
Yes.
But Ambedkar said, and Ambedkar actually foresaw that many people would not agree to this. He said, I'm not for this Dalit entry, this thing. I much rather change my religion. So by not changing, not exactly, by not changing through times, by not allowing, by discriminating between people who are Hindus, Dalits are Hindus, not allowing them entry, all you're doing is you're actually taking away their Article 21 rights. Now, all I'm saying, Sati is another example. Now, when you can say traditions have to be upheld.
No, it's not a tradition.
Sati, well, there were cases in the 80s.
There are many
not
people.
A single Sati in Kerala.
There are many
but
people.
They were at one point of time in Bengal. You cannot deny the fact that Sati was a tradition.
Sati is not a tradition.
Can you deny that in Vishnu Smriti, Sati is there, is advocated?
It is not advocated.
In Vedas it isn't.
It is said that, the women Vishnu committed Smriti, Sati. Is it advocated or advised?
Yes.
It's not.
It is. In Vedas it isn't, I agree with you, but in Vishnu Smriti it is.
It's not advised.
The basic, you see, I'm just taking two examples, Dalit and Sati. You can ignore Sati one because there are contentions that in Vedas it's not there.
But see, the Dalit part, yes, because it reflected in society again, and they were treated as untouchables,
so
and it was a reflection in society. But what is a reflection of women in society?
The discrimination against Dalits was weaved into a larger narrative, which was ritual purity. And that's where the problem arose.
Yes.
Because rituals are intrinsic to a particular faith. And I'm
But the
sure you're
problem
glad that the
is,
Supreme Court
again,
intervened to strike down such discrimination.
the
When you
problem is
talked
with
of the Maharaja of Mysore and all those people saying that Travancore should be, Dalit should be allowed entry, they were essentially acting as Supreme Court judges.
No, because it did not have a basis in Shastras. This untouchability that was being practiced did not have a basis in Shastras.
That is a very contentious argument because
Show me, please show me.
If you were to read Ambedkar's Who Are the Shudras, there are plenty of examples.
See, definition of Shudras is different. That Shudra should not be touched or discriminated.
What has happened?
Can you show me a place in the Shastras, any of the Shastras, any of the Shrutis, any of the Vedas, anywhere? It is just classification of people according to their karma.
Let me for a
totally
moment.
another discussion.
Okay,
When we go to Manusmriti,
let's come back. Let's come back to the point, and let me pick up the thread. Let's look at the one dissenting judgment.
Yeah.
Okay, Justice Indu Malhotra.
Yeah.
She says the right to gender equality to offer worship to Lord Ayappa is protected by permitting women of all ages to visit temples where he has not manifested himself in the form of a Naistik brahmachari. And there is no similar restriction in those temples. It is pertinent to mention that the respondents in this context have submitted that there are over 1,000 temples of Lord Ayappa where he has manifested in other forms. And this restriction does not apply.
Yeah.
So then why make such a big deal? Go to those other temples.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Legally, this case is very sound. I mean, Justice Malhotra, starting from the fact that you cannot bring logic and rationale to religion.
No, whose
and
case?
this
Their
argument.
case?
Yes.
Their case is very strong.
Culturally, I am against it. That's fine. But legally, you're absolutely sound because look, this is what the deity has said, and this is not a discrimination on the basis of right to survival or right,
yes,
as the
and
Dalit
it doesn't
thing.
spread to society.
Yes, but also let me just
Like
this is a very
untouchability.
important point. You see, and I think this merits a little 10 seconds from my side. You talk of purity, okay, and a lot of the feminists said that look, I have a right to bleed, I have a right to go to the thing, and so what if I'm menstruating? Now, you see, if you were to, are you going to, now even though this was not an argument, as I repeat myself, that was taken up by you people, when you this thing, you see, there was this Congress chief of Kerala, Mr. Hassan.
Yeah.
And he said menstruating women are impure. Okay. Now, many people started all this, but the point is, it is absolutely forbidden for menstruating women to touch the Quran, recite a complete verse, enter a mosque, do salat, perform tawaf, fast or have sex. There are ample verses, 56, 79, 222, Hadith Sharif. Now, where would you end when you start this process where you have a fundamental contradiction between Article 25 and Article 21? Maybe the Supreme Court judges, they were thinking like atheists, the four people. Justice Malhotra wasn't. If you want to go down this road, great, go down this road for every case. But 2 weeks ago, what happened? There was a petition in the Kerala High Court that Muslim women should be allowed to enter mosque. It was thrown out. Even at the same time, an NGO, Muslim NGO women, has actually petitioned the Supreme Court for it. You cannot have double standards. That's all I'm saying. You want to go down Article 21, remove Article 25, fantastic by me, as I said, because I am an atheist. I think like that.
Yeah.
But I'm not a militant atheist. If you want to respect one religion over the other.
The issue is this constitution is a
But
social
can
contract.
Can I trap you for a
It's
minute?
a social
if I'm allowed,
contract, right?
Rahul, if I can trap her. You mentioned triple talaq.
I'm here to be trapped.
No, that's
by both of you.
No, not at all. Not at all. Not at all.
Okay. Now, triple talaq is probably not the exact equivalence because it finds no mention in Quran. A more pertinent issue is Shah Bano judgment. Okay.
About
where
the
you have
maintenance.
iddat in Quran, 90 days you're supposed.
Yeah.
So, are you for or were you against the Shah Bano judgment? It's a simple question.
The Shah Bano judgment said that the woman should be given
alimony. Not just for the 90 days, as is permitted in Quran, but monthly. It's like forever until this time, and that is what was overturned by the Parliament.
Actually,
because it went against Sharia law and the AIP element. So, were you for Shah Bano or were you against?
It doesn't really make
let her answer because that's important.
Well, I'll tell you. I'll need to come in here. I'll tell you why. We shouldn't really be looking back in time because it serves very little purpose by soliciting her views on whether she believes X or Y. The fact is they've taken a position on this issue. And you yourself have agreed that there is a fundamental contradiction between Article 21 and Article 25. Now you can choose the route you want to traverse, but then it has to be done so equally for everyone. And I want to ask you then, would you oppose the construction of a Ram temple? Because Hindus believe that that is the Janam Sthan of Ram Lalla.
So, my opinion,
as an atheist, now let me trap you.
Yes. No, it's fine. It's fine. So, firstly, I have always believed in the issue of the Babri Masjid, that because the matter went to Supreme Court, the Babri Masjid should have been rebuilt brick by brick till such time that the Supreme Court judgment came. That is, first of all, that's point A, number my belief. Okay. Point
but
number
that's a
two,
separate issue. We're not talking about the construction.
If the Supreme Court says, if the Supreme
we're
Court
talking
says
about
the cultural aspect.
The cultural aspect.
Yes. If the
millions and millions of Hindus believe, just like certain Christians believe that Lord Jesus was born in Nazareth, in Bethlehem or what have you. A large number of Hindus are convinced that Ram Lalla was born at the exact spot where today, or once, the Babri Masjid stood and was demolished a few years ago in 1992. I'm asking you this simple question. Therefore, should, without even blinking an eye, the Supreme Court concede to the Hindu belief?
No. The Supreme Court, in its wisdom, would adjudicate on this case. And if the Supreme Court says that you do not build a Ram temple there, I would be against the government bringing an ordinance. I am for upholding the law.
Upholding the law.
Yes.
And that's the point.
Because you see there...
Ms. Pillai, that's the point.
And
At the end of
Exactly,
the
that's
day,
where I'm getting it.
No, but
at
let
the
me
end of the
finish.
day,
At the
For
end of the
35
day,
years,
because
Rahul,
for us, the Ram Mandir, if it doesn't come, it's a constant thorn in our sides because we know that the Janmasthan
but supposing
is
the
not being
courts
given to them.
deny
Yes.
us the right,
courts adjudicate
As
that
Hindus,
there was no...
I would definitely demand an ordinance.
Right. Now
You would
look at this.
definitely
Now this is where I
demand
want to come in. For 35 years, you see the whole thrust of BJP was built on pseudo-secularism that came about the Shah Bano judgment.
True.
Okay.
If the Supreme Court went against Quran and the Sharia,
They were for uniform
and the
civil
Parliament
code.
overturned it, right? BJP said no, it should not have been overturned. What does that mean? That means the BJP was for the Supreme Court siding with the religious
That's right.
edicts. Now out here, if the BJP asks for an ordinance to overturn a Supreme Court judgment, I think that would be hypocritical, right?
But in consonance,
But
kind
I'll,
of from
I'll,
faith
tell
and
you,
belief.
I'll tell you
So-
why.
So, once
because
again,
in my mind, because
okay.
I am sort of an idealist in the democratic game, in my mind, the democracy should be looking at the people, the impact it has on them, and what enriches their life. And that should be the end of the story.
Well, you
Whether
can
you have done something in the past, whether you have done something.
Well, who decides this? You have majority rule, and the majority can say this is what is enriching the lives of
Well, that's where the problem
90%
is,
of the
because
people.
and
And
this
that's
is
the
a
democracy,
and
right?
this, viewers, is a heart of the dilemma. Yes, in this particular context, it's faith versus feminism, overreach of feminism, the unshifting, unchanging shape of faith. This is a very, very piquant situation that we find ourselves in. There are no easy answers. If I were a believer, and I am, I would say leave it to God. But unfortunately, we can't do that. We have laws and we have interpreters of laws, and this matter has once again gone back to the courts. And it will take, given the fact that there was an overwhelming majority in that 5-judge bench, it will take an Herculean task for some of these own justices to sit down and agree that perhaps the case that is being represented by Ms. Pillai is actually a valid one. Till then, we are going to find a tussle on the ground in Sabarimala. Who is actually getting caught in that tussle? That's the fundamental question we must never forget. Her concept of democracy is for the people, of the people, by the people. Which people? The majority, the minority, how much of the majority, how much of the minority? I think we've had a fascinating discussion between two individuals who presented a very articulate defense of their point of view. I leave it to you to think about this. Thank you.